Hello, I'm Michael Topham, and welcome to this Part 1 Masterclass video. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the most valuable cloning and healing tools that Photoshop has to offer. We'll see how they work on a very basic document, so we can understand the theory behind them and get used to using them. Once we've learnt about the 4 cloning and healing tools, you'll be able to see how to use them to their full effect in the Part 2 Masterclass video, where we'll be using them to remove distractions from a photograph. More on that a little bit later on. Let's start off by taking a look at the Clone Stamp tool. It's a fantastic tool that everyone should know about, and it's been seen in Photoshop since the very early versions. It can be found in the toolbox over on the left hand side, or equally to enter the tool you can hit its keyboard shortcut, which is the letter S. The Clone Stamp tool works by taking sample points of the pixels that you want to use for replacement. Once you've made a sample point, by holding down the Alt key on your keyboard and clicking on the pixels you want to use, you can then very simply paint over the area you're looking to remove with a brush. Up in the options bar, you can change the brush size and the type of brush that you want to use by just clicking on this little downwards arrow right next to the brush. Keep your mode set to normal, and then just moving across, make sure the opacity and flow are both set to 100%. It's useful to take control of your opacity and flow settings when you want to take control of how much paint will be applied to the cloned area, something we'll take a much closer look at in the Part 2 video. To remove this letter X from my document, I'm just going to hold down the Alt key so I can take my sample point. I'm just going to take my sample point on these white pixels over on the left hand side, so just one click with my left hand button on my mouse, and then I can just brush very simply over the top of my letter X. And there we go, we can see it just disappears completely seamlessly. Look at that. It really is that easy to use. A retouching tool that works on a slightly different principle to that of the Clone Stamp tool is the Spot Healing Brush. To find it, just go across into the toolbox, move up a little bit from the Clone Stamp tool, and you'll find it there. Just give it a click, or equally just press the keyboard shortcut, which is the letter J. You may have experimented with the healing brush before, and the Spot Healing Brush is rather similar to it. The main advantage the Spot Healing Brush has over the healing brush is that it doesn't require you to make any sample points. The Spot Healing Brush automatically samples around the area you're retouching, thus the reason a sample point is not required. If you accidentally try to make a sample point when you're using the Spot Healing Brush tool in Photoshop, you'll notice that this little error message will come up. The Spot Healing Brush tool automatically samples pixels to correct a spot with one step. To manually set the source, use the Healing Brush tool. But don't worry, just hit cancel, and then you're ready to start using the Spot Healing Brush. Just go up into the options bar, make sure that you choose an appropriate sized brush, make sure the mode is set to normal, and make sure under the type you're set to proximity match. So if I just want to remove this green circle out of my image, all I need to do is just hover over the top of the green circle, and then I'm just going to brush over the top of it like so, very simply just making sure I've covered the whole of the green circle, and then all I need to do is just release, and then we can see that that's been perfectly removed. The Spot Healing Brush is a really handy tool to use for removing those small specks of sensor dirt from your images, and what's best, it's really quick and easy to use. We'll be using it a lot more in the Masterclass Part 2 video. The Healing Brush tool is very similar to that of the Spot Healing Brush, except it uses sample points like the Clone Stamp tool to choose the specific pixels you want to use for replacement. The Healing Brush can be found just beneath the Spot Healing Brush in the toolbox, so just hold down on the Spot Healing Brush and there it is, lying just beneath it. The reason it's such a good tool to use is that it matches the texture, lighting, transparency and the shading of the sampled pixels to the pixels that are going to be healed. So to remove this blue diamond on my document, I'm just going to hold down my Alt key, just take a sample of the white pixels over towards the left hand side, just take one click on my left hand on my mouse, like we did with the Clone Stamp tool earlier, just brush over the blue diamond to remove it seamlessly. Sometimes when you're using the Healing Brush tool, where there's a strong contrast between the edges of pixels, the colours can begin to bleed in from the outside. But what we'll do in the Part 2 video is we'll actually see how we can use selections to prevent this. The last retouching tool that we're going to take a look at is an often forgotten about tool, but it's one that's incredibly effective in the right type of image. The patch tool works like the healing brush in the way it matches the texture, lighting and shading of the sampled pixels to the source pixels, but it doesn't use a brush to complete the job. To pick out the patch tool, just go across into the toolbox and hold down on the healing brush tool, and you'll find it beneath the healing brush there, the patch tool. Just give it a click and then go up into the options bar. Just make sure you're set on new selection, and underneath the patch just make sure you're selected on source. All you need to do to use this tool is just draw it around your distraction. So I'm just going to draw a simple outline around the outside edge of my orange tick on my document like that, and then just go back to where I was at the beginning, and you'll see that the marching ants load up. Hover the cursor inside the marching ants and the patch tool cursor icon will change, and just drag it over towards the left. So I'm going to use the white pixels over towards the left of the tick, and as I do so I'm going to use these pixels here. The last step after using the patch tool is just to deselect those marching ants, and that can be done by just hitting Ctrl and D. If you fancy giving any of these retouching tools a try for yourself, we've put this document in the Start Images folder on the CD for you, so you can experiment and give them a go before moving on to a more complex image. Join me in the Part 2 Masterclass video, where we can see how to use all 4 of these fantastic cloning and healing tools to remove some noticeable distractions. See you in the next video.